2, 1.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. We know you have a busy week and we really hope to deliver some good information so that you can walk away with strategies to use with your student teacher. My name is Ashley Bayer and I'm joined by my coworker, Amy Rogan. We are both site coordinators working with different program areas in the Office of School and Community Partnerships. Over the next couple days, we will add all of our materials to the Office of School and Community Partnerships website under the Clinical Educators tab, under the Webinars tab, so that you have access to everything. Tonight, we're going to introduce and review some action steps on the scope and sequence from the book Get Better Faster. Some CEs have done some work with the scope and sequence through TEI, our Teacher Education Institute. If you have not had the opportunity to work with this material yet, we will introduce it tonight and give you the materials you need to get started with it. We will also provide you with some best practices for sharing these action steps with your student teachers. And we'll look at models for the top 5 action steps for where you can start with your student teacher in the area of classroom management. Some of what we will review tonight, we are confident that you are implementing in your classroom, and we're aware of that, but we will dive into ways and steps that you can help your student teacher become more aware of their actions and then implement these strategies into their classroom management. One great resource that we're going to be using tonight is the Get Better Faster scope and sequence. As you can see, there's a picture there on the screen with the book Get Better Faster, which is a great resource. A copy of this scope and sequence will be available on our website, but you can also find this document by searching online. We're going to solely focus on the management trajectory tonight, as you can see that's outlined on the screen. You'll notice that there are phases along the left-hand side of this document. Student teachers usually build their skills in sequence, and as you look through the phases, you'll notice that the skills seem to build on each other. Most student teachers just starting this semester will begin in phase 1 or phase 2, and we're going to share the top 5 action steps that you can target with your student teacher. We'll go into detail with each action step to help you identify how the student teacher can improve in that area. These are 5 action steps that we found to be the most effective with student teachers. These action steps can all be found in the book, Teach Like a Champion. So the first one's strong voice, what to do directions, teacher radar, whole class reset, and narrate the positive. When sharing action steps, it's important to be very strategic with your student teacher. You'll want to share these action steps during your post-conference, and these steps will allow the student teacher to become aware of any challenges, see the action step broken down into steps, and practice before actually applying. So the first thing you want to do is identify the highest leverage action step to correct a challenge. And so when you're watching a student teacher, what is one thing that really you can identify that will make the biggest difference or the biggest impact on student learning? You want to make sure that you're modeling these steps with student teachers. And so this could be asking the student to watch you, asking the student to sit down and look at a script, asking the student teacher to look at some examples. And so while you're meeting with your student teacher, you want to make sure that you're allowing that student teacher to see these action steps being modeled. You're going to give these action steps in bite-size and observable actions so that they know the what and the how. And then you're going to have your student teacher script into his or her lesson plan how they will use this action step. So have the student teacher be very specific in their script and allow them time to practice or role play before doing this in front of the students. After the student teacher has the opportunity to implement this action plan or action step, be sure to follow up and give feedback on how they executed the steps that they've put in place. The first action step we're going to look at is strong voice. So standing and speaking with a purpose in front of students. Oftentimes you might hear this also called as teacher voice. You'll notice that these action steps fall in the phase 1 of the scope and sequence, and therefore is one of the first skills we want student teachers to build. We're going to watch a video of an example of a teacher using a strong voice. While you're watching this video, think about what actions this teacher takes to implement a strong voice.
Miss Nag, I don't remember algebra. Huh? I don't remember algebra.
You don't?
I don't either. I did that packet and I was on
snack. In Arizona, I was really bad and I didn't go to classes, so I don't know algebra.
You guys will be fine. It's gonna be great.
It's gonna be range, domain, none of that.
No, me either. I did
Khan Academy. Algebra 2, all eyes tracking me up here in 3, 2, 1. Great. When you guys come in, since none of you are new, you're gonna give me a strong, nice handshake. Say good morning at the door. On your desk when you come in, there's no seat numbers because this is your float block. So this is your group every single Thursday. At this time, when you come in, you're just gonna sit at a desk with a packet and a notebook. Come in silently and urgently. You have 1 minute to copy down your prep work. Madison, your eyes just come up here. You have 1 minute to copy down your prep work and get started on your packet. Come in silently, please. Good morning, Johnny.
Good morning.
So after watching that video, you can see that the teacher really did stand up in front of the students. She was making eye contact with the students. And when she went from having a small conversation to giving those what to do directions, she was really projecting her voice and punching those keywords to make sure students were hearing her. So with strong voice, we really want student teachers to understand the importance of standing and speaking with a purpose. And when working with your student teacher, you want to be able to show them how they can implement and then show them how they're using their strong voice. So the how is very important when we're working with student teachers because often they know what a strong voice is, but they might not know how to implement it. And so we do always forget as veteran teachers that we did take these steps to learn and understand these skills, but how do we break this down for a student teacher? So as you can see on the screen, we see the what is using our strong voice, and the how, we want that student to square up and stand still. We want them to have a formal register, so they're projecting their voice, they're punching their keywords, and then they're making eye contact with those students. Since strong voice is one of the first skills student teachers will master, it will carry into many other skills.
And one thing I would add here that's really important about what this teacher does in the video is how she switches from formal register when she's giving directions and then goes into a more, relaxed and fun tone when she's just talking to the students or greeting them. And that's really important to point out to student teachers because oftentimes they hear strong voice and they think like, that's not how I want to teach all day, or I don't want to be mean. And it's just about, having a formal register when you're giving those key instructions.
The next action step is what to do or precise direction. So if you joined in on a past webinar from our office, we did call the what to do precise direction. So those are interchangeable. This is where a student teacher sets expectations with clear what to do directions. We're going to look at some examples and some not examples of what to do. And so when you look at this document, be thinking about what is true of all of the examples. And then what's the biggest difference between the non-examples and the examples? So as you can see, as you look at the examples and the non-examples, the examples are very clear. And so if you, voices off and pencils down. The teacher is speaking in very bullet points, eliminating any extra words. They're being very concrete about what the students need to accomplish. And they're telling the kids what to do. So instead of stop fooling around, we're telling them to put your feet under the desk. And so that is exactly what we want the students to be doing. So again, when we're working with student teachers, we really want to teach them the how. So when we're thinking about them giving directions, we want them to be able to tell students what to do and not what not to do. So again, going back to that example, we're thinking we don't want to tell them to stop fooling around. We want them to make sure we're telling them exactly what to do. Put your feet under the desk. We also want to make sure students are talking in bullet points, so they're eliminating any extra words so that their directions are very clear to students. They're going to give these directions for which they can see the compliance. They want to be able to see the student follow through. And then they're going to be very concrete about how the student can accomplish this.
Okay, the next skill we're going to look at is teacher radar. So this is simply knowing what's going on in your classroom and being aware of when students are on task or off task. So before we look at this next clip of teacher radar, I wanted to share a little context. So like we mentioned before, these are coming from the Teach Like a Champion book, and the Teach Like a Champion team has given various names over the years to these dance moves that teachers use for be seen looking or to make sure students see them looking. So in this video, you're going to see two examples of these dance moves. First, the disco finger, and then second, the quarterback. So as you watch, just consider what actions is the teacher taking to implement teacher radar.
All right, so let's bring it back in 3, 2, and 1. Great, thank you. So as I walked around, I noticed that most of us were able to identify.
Okay, so what does lithium want in order to get a full valence shell? How many valence electrons does it have right now? And is it easier to lose 1 or gain 7 indigo? So if it loses 1 electron, what charge will it have? Keep going. What charge do electrons have? Oh, yeah. So then fix this to show that it lost this electron.
All right, so those happened quickly, but the disco finger, after he gave a direction, he was just pointing with his finger and kind of saying yes, 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 to make sure students were actually following that. And then with the quarterback, even when she was looking down with each and working with an individual student, she was still clearly looking around to see what other students were doing. So this is just an example of teacher radar. So there's a couple different components you can teach student teachers for teacher radar. The first one's scanning the room. I've highlighted be seen looking in the how side because that's usually my go-to as a first step to teach new teachers for teacher radar. You want them to practice exaggerating this so that students know they're looking. As you can see here, other hows that you can focus on for this action step are about body position and also pre-planning hotspots, which just means pre-planning ahead of the lesson groups or areas in the room that you really want to pay attention to while you're teaching. So this could be students that have just transitioned, students you know are exceeding expectations, students who are having an off day, or anything like that. The other big component of teacher radar that you can focus on is circulating the room with purpose. So this means intentionally moving the desks around the perimeter of the room. You also might pre-plan with your student teachers where in the classroom they should stand during certain moments throughout the lesson. So this week, for example, I had a student teacher stand at the front of the room for her entire lesson. And when we were debriefing, I suggested that, while she has a student up to the front of the board solving a problem, that might be a good time for her to move and stand at the back of the room so she could monitor the whole class. And her response was like, wow, I've never thought of standing anywhere else but the front of the room while I teach. So again, we really can't emphasize enough how important it is to not only share the action step, but also model and name for student teachers the how to do that move. So circulating doesn't just mean walking around during independent work, but you can also walk around and be in different positions of the room during key moments. This next strategy is another one that we see a need for with our student teachers over and over again. If students get off task or don't do something right the first time, often student teachers aren't really sure what to do to correct them, and so they just don't. And so this is a strategy you can teach for this, which is an in-the-moment whole class reset. So we're going to show you a script of what this could sound like. So the context here would be a student teacher's in first grade and is trying to go over the warm-up, but he's having trouble because a couple of different students are talking to each other and not really paying attention or listening. So he's going to stop teaching, square up, and in a strong voice, give these clear what to do directions. So eyes on me, voices off. Thank you. That's what first graders look like. So then he'll pick up his energy and tone again. After he gave that clear what to do, he scanned the room intentionally to make sure all students know he was looking for this. So giving student teachers, these specific steps to execute this reset will really help them be effective here. So these skills are all ones we've already gone over. So if you're using the Get Better, Faster, Scope, and Sequence, the skills really do build upon each other. So you can say, like, we've been practicing strong voice, you've done a great job. So just like you've done when you give directions, when you do a whole class reset, you need to use that strong voice and give those clear what to do directions. And then you need to scan just like we've been practicing. So putting all of this together is something you might need to lay out for your student teacher and give them the specific what and how of the action step. All right, our last skill for the session, and my personal favorite, is narrate the positive. So this is a great skill to teach student teachers to use to narrate specifically what what students are doing well and to reinforce expectations. So take a look at these examples and non-examples and think, what do you notice is true for all of the examples? So hopefully one thing you notice is that the examples are very specific. So instead of just good job, Darius, you're telling Darius specifically what you're reinforcing. So Darius has his pencil at the top of his desk. I always like to remind student teachers that when you are telling Darius he has his pencil at the top of his desk and reinforcing that, not only does that send a positive message to Darius, but it also helps all of Darius's friends around him who might not have their pencil at the top of the desk like you asked, have a little reminder like, oh yeah, I need to do this. So here's an example of what this might look like in a lesson. So after you give those clear what to do directions, you scan to make sure you're using teacher radar, and then you immediately narrate specific actions where students are meeting expectations. So when I say go, voices off, pencil on the top of your desk, and all eyes on me, go. Ashley's eyes are on me. Erica has her pencil on her desk. Wow, all of table 2 has their voices off. I always like to mention to student teachers to get really excited about this. You are happy that students are meeting expectations, and you really want to give them that attention for doing the right thing. So if you take a look at the how column here, it's important to note that you're teaching student teachers to narrate what students are doing well and that they can do this immediately after giving a direction. You also want to coach student teachers around their narrations being specific and quick so that they don't lose momentum. This strategy really shouldn't take away from instruction, rather it should enhance it because it will keep all students engaged and meeting your expectations. We've created a feedback guide that you can use when working with your student teachers on these specific skills. We'll include the link on the website right under this webinar. And you can use this either in written feedback when you're writing to a student teacher, perhaps on your OFF form, or when you're giving them feedback orally during a lesson or maybe after when you're debriefing. We've provided some stems that you can use. However, feel free, please, to personalize this however it works for you. If you're using these stems, it might sound like, if you're working on strong voice, for example, it was effective when you squared up and stood still. Next time, try making eye contact with students as you're giving a direction. So again, we'll provide this for the 5 skills we worked on tonight. Once you're ready to move on from these 5 skills with your student teacher, the what and the how can be found by looking at the Get Better Faster scope and sequence. And then for a more in-depth view of each of these skills, you can look into Teach Like a Champion. So a quick review of these best practices for sharing action steps. First, you want to identify one action step that will make the biggest impact on instruction at that time. I know oftentimes you watch a student teacher and there's lots of things you could focus on, but it's really important to identify the highest leverage action step at that time. What's really going to make the biggest difference? It can be really overwhelming for a new teacher to work on a million things at once. And so choose that one that's the biggest and most important at the time. And then make sure you provide a model. We provide the model first so that student teachers can really see this in action and then pick out the how or the criteria for doing this action step on their own. So this is really similar to the process we used tonight with you all, where we first showed you an example, either a video or the script, and then we asked you to think about what do you notice is true for all of these examples, or what do you notice is true of the teacher doing this action step. Once this teacher can pull that out themselves, you can stamp it with them and say, like, you're exactly right. This is what you want to do, and this is how you will do it. And then, of course, you'll want to have them plan it into their action step. What might this sound like in tomorrow's lesson? Practice, have them teach it, follow up, give them feedback, and it's okay to stick with the same action step for a few days until they really master it. So just to close out, take a minute to kind of stamp this learning that you just did and reflect on what's an action step you'd like to implement with your student teacher in the upcoming week, and what will be the impact of implementing this action step. All right, that is all we have for you this evening. Don't forget to take the quiz that's linked below here, and feel free to reach out to your site coordinator or to us with any questions. Thanks again for the work you're doing with our student teachers, and we hope you have a good night.